Imagine this. You invest in what looks like a dream. A luxurious French countryside resort, elegant chateau, maybe vineyards, and you're promised safe, asset-backed returns. Sounds perfect, right? But what if that dream starts to, well, crumble? Revealing a really complex web of companies, serious financial problems, and even eventually a massive police operation. Today we're doing a deep dive into the story of Halcyon Retreat. We're working from public interest warnings, corporate filings from the UK and France, and law enforcement reports. Our job is to unpack how this went from a seemingly safe bet to something full of red flags. And crucially, what it all means if you're holding loan notes linked to this. Think of this as getting straight to the facts, cutting through the marketing gloss.
Yeah, it's a fascinating, if worrying, case study. It shows how fast things can change and how vital it is to look behind the brochure. We'll connect the dots, the company structures, what people have actually experienced, the key players, and what the authorities did. The aim is to give you a clear, unfiltered view of what's been going on.
Okay, let's start with that initial promise. Halcyon Retreat, described as this high-end luxury resort in France, the centerpiece being the Chateau de la Caserne. Investors were sold unregulated loan notes. Now, they were marketed as safe, secure, and asset-backed. That sounds great, obviously.
It does sound appealing, but that word unregulated is key straight away. It means these aren't overseen by bodies like the Financial Conduct Authority here in the UK. So right off the bat, there's less protection, less official scrutiny compared to regulated investments. That alone should make you pause and look closer.
Definitely a point to note. So how did that promise of safety hold up against, well, the reality found in the company filings? Let's maybe start with the structure behind it all. It wasn't just one company, was it? It's like a network across the UK and France.
Exactly. You've got Halcyon Marketing and Administration Limited in the UK, apparently. That used to be called Halcyon Developments Group Limited. Then there's SAS Halcyon Retreat over in France. And, importantly, a whole string of UK companies called the HR Note SPVs.
SPVs, special purpose vehicles, right? What's their role typically?
Yeah, special purpose vehicles, they're often set up for a specific reason, like holding a certain asset or managing one part of a bigger deal. They can be legitimate, of course, but having a whole chain of them like this, well, it can sometimes make things less transparent, harder to see who owns what, who's responsible for what.
Okay, so potentially complex. Now, you mentioned the filings. Despite the safe and secure marketing, what did Companies House actually show?
This is where it gets quite alarming. The recent filings paint a really stark financial picture. Every single one of those HR Note SPVs, they're balance sheet insolvent.
Balance sheet insolvent. Can you break that down? What does that mean in practical terms for someone who invested?
Sure. Simply put, it means the company owes more money, its liabilities, than the value of everything it owns, its assets. It can't pay its debts. For an investor, this is a huge red flag. It means the very companies that were supposed to hold the security for their loan notes are themselves in serious financial trouble. Makes getting your money back incredibly difficult.
Right, and you have specific figures from the sources.
Yes, and they really underline the scale of the problem. For example, HR SPV Note Limited showed a deficit of nearly £198,000. HR SPV Note 2 Limited, minus £128,500. HR SPV Note 3, minus $34,000. And it goes on. HR SPV Note 4 was minus over $29,000. HR SPV Note 5, minus £700 or so. These aren't small amounts, especially when added up across the board.
Wow. Those numbers are, quite something. It sounds like a systemic issue across these SPVs.
It really does. And this isn't just a recent snapshot either. Our sources point to a pattern emerging over years.
Okay.
Well, for instance, there was a winding up petition filed against Halcyon Marketing and Administration Limited in 2025. Now, a winding up petition is serious. It's a legal attempt to force a company to close because it can't pay its debts.
Right, potentially leading to liquidation.
Exactly. While that specific petition concluded, it's a sign of trouble. And perhaps even more telling, HR SPV Note 4 Limited faced winding up petitions back in 2022 and 2023. Insolvency Law were noted as a creditor in those. So this indicates a history of financial instability, not just a sudden downturn. These problems seem to have been building for a while.
So beyond the stark figures in the company accounts, what about the impact on the people who actually invested? Our sources mentioned real-world experiences.
Yes, and this is where the human cost becomes clear. Across independent review platforms, well, we have to say these aren't independently verified by us. There's a consistent pattern of complaints, people talking about unpaid interest, capital not being returned when it was due, broken promises. You read accounts of people feeling immense frustration, financial stress.
You can imagine.
Yeah.
People relying on that income or wanting their capital back for other things. It really brings home the human side behind these corporate structures and filings.
Absolutely. It highlights that gap between the glossy brochure and the lived reality for some investors.
Now, given all this financial distress and frustration, who were the key people behind Halcyon Retreat? Our sources mention specific names.
They do. The names that come up consistently are Robin Beresford and Alan Bird. They're described as longtime business partners. And interestingly, they have a background in what are called fractional holiday ownership schemes. That history itself provides some context.
Okay, fractional ownership. And does their track record show anything relevant here?
Well, yes, the sources point to something quite significant. In the liquidation of a previous company, they were involved with Southwest Commercial, which used to be called Beresford and Bird Worldwide Limited. The liquidator reported a large overdrawn director's loan account in Robin Beresford's name.
An overdrawn director's loan.
Yeah.
Meaning he owed the company money.
Exactly. A substantial amount, £887,229, according to the liquidator's report. And the crucial point from the official records at Companies House, it seems that amount remains unpaid years later.
Nearly £900,000 owed to a previous company that went into liquidation. And it's still outstanding.
According to the official records cited in our sources, yes.
From a corporate governance perspective, that must be a major red flag, surely. What does that suggest?
It's a huge red flag. It raises serious questions about financial management, responsibility towards a company's creditors, and adherence to fiduciary duties. An unpaid debt of that size from a liquidated company. It suggests a pattern that warrants scrutiny, especially when looking at subsequent ventures like Halcyon.
And there was more regarding regulatory scrutiny.
Yes. The sources also state that back in August 2019, the UK Insolvency Service started director disqualification proceedings against Robin Beresford. These proceedings are typically brought when there are concerns about serious misconduct or mismanagement that make someone unfit to be a company director.
So a history involving a large unpaid director's loan from a liquidated company and director disqualification proceedings initiated by the Insolvency Service.
Correct. Taken together, these details provide really important background context about the individuals centrally involved in the Halcyon network. It points to pre-existing financial issues and regulatory attention.
Okay, let's connect all these threads. We have insolvent SPVs, investor complaints, this history with the key individuals. What does it mean for the security investors thought they had? You mentioned the asset-backed promise earlier. Our sources highlight a critical issue with the security trustee arrangement, right?
Yes, this is absolutely crucial. The loan notes themselves name the security trustee as SAS Halcyon Retreat. That's the French registered company we mentioned.
And the role of a security trustee is normally to protect the investor's interests, hold the security independently.
Precisely. They're meant to be an impartial third party holding the assets, like the chateau potentially, as collateral, acting purely for the benefit of the loan note holders, especially if the main company defaults.
But SAS Halcyon Retreat wasn't independent.
Not at all, according to the sources. Robin Beresford is listed as its president and chairman.
Wait, so the person heavily involved in running the main Halcyon venture is also the head of the entity supposedly acting as the independent safeguard for investors.
Exactly. It's a fundamental conflict of interest. The whole point of an independent trustee is that separation, that impartiality. If the trustee is essentially the same party as the borrower, the independence is completely compromised. It makes the whole concept of the security being held for the investors seem, well, illusory.
It really undermines that core promise of asset-backed security, doesn't it? The GAR is part of the group they're supposed to be guarding against, effectively.
That's a good way to put it. It removes the vital check and balance that investors would rightly expect in such an arrangement.
And things didn't stop there. The situation seems to have escalated significantly beyond just corporate structure and financial issues. Our sources detail a major event in 2025.
Yes, a very significant development. On March 25th, 2025, there was a large-scale law enforcement operation at the Château de la Caserne itself. This wasn't just local police. It involved French and European authorities, with support from Europol.
Europol involvement suggests cross-border dimensions or seriousness.
It certainly indicates a level of coordination and seriousness beyond a purely domestic French issue. The raid was overseen by the Guéret prosecutor. Reports mentioned specialist teams, search dogs, even aerial support. It was clearly a major planned operation.
Were Beresford or Bird present during this?
The reports confirmed that neither of them were at the chateau when the operation took place.
Okay. And do we know what the focus of the inquiry was?
The specific details remain confidential, as is normal in ongoing investigations. However, the sheer scale of the operation, the resources deployed, the international cooperation strongly suggests that the authorities have very serious concerns. This isn't just a minor check, it's a significant show of force, indicating the gravity of whatever is being investigated. It shifts the context dramatically.
How so? How does a major police raid change the picture compared to, say, the insolvency issues we discussed?
Well, insolvency is primarily a civil matter about debts and assets. A large-scale police raid involving Europol points towards a potential criminal investigation. We don't know the specifics, but such operations often relate to suspicions of fraud, money laundering, or other serious financial crimes. For anyone holding loan notes, this adds another layer of complexity and risk. Their investment isn't just tied up in failing companies, it might now be entangled in a criminal probe, which could freeze assets and make recovery even harder and longer.
Right. So let's pull this all together. We started with this image of a luxury French resort investment promising safety and security. But what we've actually unpacked is a situation involving multiple insolvent companies, widespread reports of investor distress, key individuals with a history of financial issues and regulatory actions, a fundamental conflict of interest at the heart of the security structure, and now a major international law enforcement operation at the property itself. Given all that, our sources have a clear message for anyone holding these loan notes, whether in the HRSPV companies or Halcyon Marketing and Administration Limited. What's the advice?
The sources strongly urge anyone in that position to seek clarity on your position without delay.
Without delay. Why the urgency?
Because time is often critical in these situations. Assets can be moved, dissipated, or frozen by legal actions. The sooner you understand your options and take action, generally the better the prospects for potential recovery. And the sources specifically mention that insolvency and law have already successfully recovered significant amounts for loan note holders from all the HR note SPVs in the past.
So they have a track record with these specific entities.
Apparently so. And they state they're prepared to act again. They encourage listeners who are affected to contact their investigations team directly. The email provided in the sources is investigations@insolvencylaw.co.uk. It's an opportunity to discuss your specific circumstances and see what recovery options might be viable.
Okay, that's clear practical advice. Taking action seems key. Stepping back, this whole story really underscores how vital it is to look beyond the marketing sheen of any investment, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Understanding the corporate structure, who the individuals involved really are, their track record, whether the safeguards like trustees are truly independent, these things are critical.
It's not just for those caught up in this specific situation, but really for anyone considering any kind of investment, especially perhaps unregulated ones. Digging deep is essential. This deep dive into Halcyon Retreat really does lay bare how complex things can get behind an attractive facade. It's a stark reminder of the gap that can exist between the pitch and the reality shown in filings and records.
Yeah, and what strikes me is how different red flags, maybe an old unpaid loan here, a conflict of interest there, they weren't isolated issues. They seem to have converged to really undermine the whole thing. It shows that seemingly small details in the structure, like who the trustee is, can actually be the most critical factors determining if your investment is truly secure or just looks that way on paper.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening, reflecting on this story. How can you, as an investor, really gauge the true independence of the safeguards that are supposedly there to protect you, in which seemingly minor details, perhaps a director's role in multiple related companies, or a footnote about a past financial issue, might actually be the key indicator of the real risk involved? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope unpacking this complex situation helps you feel more informed and ready to ask the crucial questions about any investment.